Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is C.K. Hoffler. I am the president of the National Bar Association. Actually, I've been the president for 1 week and 1 day. And we have had a whirlwind. COVID is at front center of my administration. It's one of the 3 priorities for this year. And this panel is proof positive of the significance that the NBA is placing on COVID and on finding solutions for our membership, for businesses, and for the community. Today, I am just so honored. This is one of our first webinars that we're having in my administration, and it's only fitting that it would be on one of the areas that is really, really devastating our community. But tonight, we're focusing on businesses, on the membership, on our businesses, on law firms who still have the opportunity to apply for assistance from the federal government. We know that there's been some inequity. We know that a lot of people feel that they didn't have the access to the PPP or to other forms of assistance during this very, very tumultuous time in our country and in our lives. But there's still help, there's still time. And this seminar will give you the hows, the when, and the who you need to reach out to and how you need to do it so that you can still apply for assistance with the federal government related to the devastation of COVID. So against that introduction, I'm going to introduce a woman who, quite frankly, needs no introduction, Kendra Perkins Norwood. She is an extraordinary lawyer out of the District of Columbia. She's going to introduce these magnificent panelists who are going to bring to you so much substance of what we need to do as an NBA family, as NBA businesses and other businesses that are not part of the NBA to get assistance from the federal government. We recognize that COVID has impacted all of us, and each of the speakers will contribute and give you so much rich information. So enjoy and welcome to the National Bar Association. Kendra?
Thank you, President Hoffler. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We are so grateful for your leadership. We are so grateful for your vision. And we truly appreciate you taking the time to be with us this evening. We know you're very busy, jumping from Zoom to Zoom. And so we just appreciate the time that you were able to give us on the front end. Good evening, everyone. I am Kendra Perkins Norwood, the founder and chair of the Government Procurement Law Section of the National Bar Association. I am a government contracts attorney in Washington, D.C. at the law firm Wiley Ryan, where I represent companies that are doing business with the government. Tonight's topic is an important one. It is a timely one. It is an urgent one, as President Hoffler just explained. And I am so grateful to tonight's speakers for all the information and knowledge they're going to impart to you all tonight. I trust it will be beneficial as you and your clients, and as we all continue to navigate these most challenging times. So I do have the pleasure of introducing tonight's speakers. They are extremely impressive, and I'm going to hurry to do these introductions so that you can hear more from them because they are indeed the experts. So first, we have Trinette Chandler, who is the founder of the Chandler Law Group. Trinette has nearly 30 years of experience working on complex, high visibility federal contracts, both as a contractor herself, as well as an attorney and as a consultant. As a trusted advisor in her practice, she leverages the legal, business, and technical expertise she has gained over the years in her work on multi-million and multi-billion-dollar contracts with the federal government to benefit her clients. She also uses her extensive knowledge and skills to provide assistance to minority-owned, veteran-owned, and women-owned small businesses that are seeking to do business with the federal government. This event tonight was Trinette's brainchild, and we thank her so much for bringing the event to fruition this evening. She's a valued member of the section, and we appreciate you, Trinette. Thank you for being here.
I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Next, we have Darren Riley, who is the founding member of Riley Trade Law, PLLC. Darren has extensive experience advising clients on matters involving U.S. export controls and government contracts issues. In his practice, Mr. Riley assists his clients with understanding and complying with anti-bribery restrictions. And he also assists his clients with developing company practices and guidelines to ensure their compliance with federal laws and regulations that govern government contracting. He has conducted due diligence in connection with mergers and acquisitions involving government contractors, and he counsels clients on the potential compliance risks and liabilities associated with these transactions. His practice also focuses on assisting small businesses with obtaining business status certifications and navigating the complexities of doing business with government customers. Darren, thank you so much for being a part of this tonight as well. I know you had a very key role in bringing it together as well. Also joining us this evening is Randy Hughes, owner of Counting Pennies, LLC, a tax and accounting firm. Randy is an industry leader when it comes to the PPP and the EIDL programs, as well as business tax services. Randy is an enrolled agent authorized to practice before the Internal Revenue Service, and he is certified in professional bookkeeping and taxation. He has years of corporate accounting experience, as well as significant experience in auditing and financial reporting as a controller. He started his company Counting Pennies back in 2009 to give back to our community. He comes from a family of business owners and educators, which allows him to approach his work in accounting with passion and empathy. Thank you, Randy, for joining us.
With you this evening.
Next, we have Jeff Banks, who is Vice President at United Bank, as well as a small business owner himself. For the past 30 years, Jeff has been providing smart banking solutions for his clients in the National Capital Region. As I mentioned, he is the Vice President for Community Services at United Bank, which is a $25 billion community bank with offices in 8 states, as well as the District of Columbia. Jeff's focus at the bank has been on local and national firms, municipalities, and professional service providers, as well as nonprofits. He is extremely active in the local DC community, having been appointed to numerous boards and councils. He has taught financial literacy classes in many public schools and more than 700 returning citizens and ex-offenders in the DC area. And Jeff has received many, many awards for community service from a number of groups, including the American Bankers Association, the Urban League, the Collective Empowerment Group, and Ceasefire. So we thank you, Jeff, for being here with us this evening.
Thank you.
And last, but certainly not least, we have Jim Henderson, who is the CEO of JEH Financial. Jim has more than 30 years of experience in financial services. He is also a retired military intelligence officer with 27 years of service in the Air Force. He is also a service-disabled veteran and a small business owner. At his firm, Jim uses a wide range of investment instruments to address his clients' needs. He also provides customized financial seminars and workshops to various businesses and other community organizations. Jim has served as the executive director of a minority business opportunity foundation. He has served on and chaired a local board of education. He is also the past board chair of a local chamber of commerce, where he stood up an international business committee. Jim's entire adult life has been dedicated to community service, and he has received numerous awards and recognitions for his service. Notably, in 2016, he was awarded President Obama's Lifetime Achievement Award. So as you can see, we have a very impressive slate of speakers this evening. And so I do not want to waste any more time. I would like to turn it right over to Trinette and Darren so that we can get the program started. Thank you all for joining, and I hope you are enriched by the material we'll be presenting this evening. Thank you.
I'm going to say goodbye. I've got another seminar webinar that I have to attend, and I'll jump back in when I can, but thank you all in advance for all this magnificent seminar. I know it's going to be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President. Kyle, if you could share the PowerPoint slides, please. Thank you. Am I able to take control now of the slides, Kyle?
I'll move them along for you. Just let
Thank
me
you
know
so
whenever you
much.
want me to advance.
All right, very good. If you could advance to the next slide. Welcome, everyone. Our goal today is to talk about helping small businesses, helping you understand and apply for COVID-19 stimulus funds. Next slide. We've heard from Madam President Hoffler, and we're very thankful for her kind words. Next slide. And of course, we heard from Kendra Perkins Norwood, who actually, again, stood up the entire government procurement law section at the NBA in this past month, after, I think, a year and a half of effort. Thank you. Next slide. These are the people that are going to be talking today, our panelists. They've been introduced. Thank you. Next slide. Our goal today is to talk about several things. We just want to serve as a sort of a discussion, a dialogue amongst friends, if you will, to make sure that we are getting information and resources out there as critical deadlines are fast approaching to help our community take advantage of the stimulus funds that are there. So we're going to talk about the current state of small businesses in a COVID-19 environment. We'll talk about the Paycheck Protection Program, also known as the PPP, as well as the EIDL program, the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program, that many people are not aware of how they can take advantage of that. We'll also discuss key relationships in our community that must be sustained to thrive during and after COVID, as well as reasons to make sure our community applies for this aid. And lastly, we'll talk about the CARES Act. There are a number of small business benefits and provisions you may have never heard of that we need to make sure that you learn about today. Next slide, please. The current state of small businesses in a COVID environment. So according to a survey from the National Defense Industrial Association, 62% of firms with less than $1 million in yearly revenue actually sustained negative impacts to their cash flow due to COVID. Another 30% of those surveyed expected their fixed price contracts in government contracting to overrun the originally contracted costs by as much as 20% due to issues surrounding the pandemic. On June 22nd, 2020, Ellen Lord, who's the Undersecretary of Defense for Acquisition and Sustainment, advised in a press release that, in a press briefing at the Pentagon, that they are continuing to assess the 3-month acquisitions delay from April to June of this year. The lag was due to COVID inefficiencies that needed to be resolved. Again, these types of delays were detrimental to small businesses in particular because it also delayed payment. And as we know, whether you're in government contracting, whether you're running a restaurant, whether you're running a barbershop or you're a physician, whatever you are doing, delayed payments are hurtful to any small business. Next slide, please. So basically, some of the examples of the way the government is trying to help small businesses get their funds more quickly, they actually implemented a DFARS clause, which means it's the defense acquisition regulation, basically, is what it is for those who are not in government contracting. And basically, the goal was to accelerate payments to small business and subcontractors via a number of means. One of those is they had a $3 billion pot of accelerated progress payments to make sure that those funds were not stalled in being received by small businesses. The government also had a number of simplified acquisition opportunities where they increased the amount that you can bid for work under those opportunities. And even the Navy and Marine Corps launched a $30 million Naval Research Enterprise Rapid Funding Initiative to make sure that they are getting new ideas at the table, new contractors, fresh perspectives and technology from niche contractors in a way that normally you would not see. So these were some of the measures that the government took to try to help government contractors stay afloat. But then we also know that as the way government contractors go, that also affects the communities that are around them as well, because there's a lot, especially in this area, I'm in the Northern Virginia area, that the government contracting database or base of firms actually supports. Next slide, please. So firms still need other forms of cash infusion to remain economically viable. So that is where the Paycheck Protection Program Flexibility Act that was amended on June 5th has come into play, as well as the EIDL program that was updated as of June of this year, which Darren will tell you about, and other provisions of the CARES Act. Next slide. So with the Paycheck Protection Program, this program is quite critical. It actually has now less restrictive requirements on its uses, which a lot of firms were not aware of. And if you have questions, feel free to post them in the chat, and we will grab them as we go through and answer them at the end. But to be eligible for the Paycheck Protection Loan, an applicant needed to have fewer than 500 employees with the principal place of their residence in the United States, or be a small business under the applicable NAICS codes size standard to be applicable for eligible for a PPP. The calculation of the number of employees really depended on the affiliation principles, which we don't want to get into that. But basically, what we wanted to make sure is that when people were applying for these loans, they knew it was a 1% interest rate for the loan. Originally, if you applied for the loan and were granted the loan prior to June of this year, you had a 2-year repayment program that you had to accept. If you had any loans dispersed after June 5th of this year, the government came back and amended the PPP law into the PPP-FA law, and then it extended the payment terms and the forgiveness opportunities. So now, if you actually receive your loan after June 5th, you're actually eligible to repay it back over 5 years. To be eligible, your business had to be in operation as of February 15th of 2020. What's really nice about the amended PPP loan program is that it's more streamlined and it's easier to apply for. What's also beneficial is that there's a very robust forgiveness program that actually has fewer restrictions than previously was held in the original PPP. So now you're eligible to apply for up to several $1 million in funds. And you actually, as long as you spend the funds that you receive, at least 60% goes to payroll, and it can go up to 100%, but if at least 60% goes to payroll, and if at least 40% goes to mortgage, rent, utilities, then you're able to have the entire loan amount forgiven. So it's a streamlined application. It's a longer period to pay the loan back if you have to pay it back at all at that 1% interest rate. But even if you apply for loan forgiveness and you're granted, you can actually have your loan completely wiped out. So we're very excited about that. That is going to be a boost to big business, to small business, The government also rolled out 2 different loan applications for forgiveness. A very streamlined one, the SBA form 3508 Easy, and then the standard form, which a lot of the larger firms are using. Next slide, please. So the Paycheck Protection, again, open to sole proprietors, which was not the case when it was originally rolled out, to nonprofits, as well as almost any business with fewer than 500 employees. There are some restrictions based on the type of business, whether it's something dealing with, the sex trade, et cetera, those will not be accepted, but pretty much anything else is accepted in the program. The deadline to apply for your loans, I cannot stress this enough. Please tell everybody that you know. The deadline to apply for the PPP program is this Saturday. August 8th is the deadline. It takes about 7 to 8 minutes at most to apply under the streamlined procedures. You'll need to have very basic information, such as a copy of your license front and back, something that shows that you were in business as of February of this year. You'll also need to have your Schedule C, a copy of your 2019 taxes. And it's just really simple. They're making it simple to get this information in so that they can get the loans out. Our team here on the call actually created a very short, quick reference guide, and Kyle, our webinar host, will actually send that out to everyone who's on this thread after the call. But it's a quick 2-pager that walks you through the very simple steps to apply for your loan. Now, we don't endorse these following companies that I will mention. However, the ones that we have found, even as of today, that are accepting loan applications are fundingcircle.com, cabbage.com, and bluevine.com. And they are returning these applications fairly quickly, as in 24 hours, whereas opposed to weeks or months ago, it may have taken up to 2 months or more to have a response from these firms. So please encourage your clients, your friends, your family members, whether it's, again, your barber, your beautician, your doctor, your physician, your food truck person, please tell them to apply. And if they're frustrated, tell them to apply anyway. If they've applied before, tell them to apply again. because what we're finding is that the application process has gotten to be much better, and that the applications are not only being accepted, but people are being funded for really great amounts. The amount that you can apply for is equal to 2.5% of your monthly payroll of last year. Even if you're a sole proprietor, that would be basically looking at your entire year as a sole proprietor, looking at your net profit, dividing that by 12 so you can get a monthly amount of profit, and then multiplying that by a factor of 2.5. And then that would actually be what you were eligible to apply to be granted. There is a limit, however, on your salary. So if you have a salary of $100,000 or more, then you are capped out at $8,300 per month and some change as to what you're able to receive in the way of loans. Okay, next slide, please. So now we're going to talk about forgiveness. Colonel Henderson, would you please talk to us about the Paycheck Protection Program forgiveness?
Yes. Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Am
sir.
I on?
Yes, you are.
Okay. So one thing before I get started on that is to talk about Congress is in the beginning, and they're in the midst of doing the third iteration of the legislation. Please encourage your Congress people to change the tax deductibility of the forgivable part of the loans, because the way the IRS stands right now, if you have been forgiven on the loan, you cannot get a deduction on your Schedule C. So that is one thing that we need to encourage Congress to make that change. As far as the other part of the forgiveness for sole proprietors, basically the amount of money that you get as a sole proprietor, it is all deductible, because they're only going to give you the 2.5 times your monthly rate. That's the way the loan amount should be. And as long as you document, it is best to put the money into a separate account for the non-sole proprietors, for the Schedule C, the C corporations and the S corporations. That money should be put in a separate account labeled loan, and then document all of your expenses related to that. You can, as the slide says, you can document your mortgage payments, your lease obligations, utilities. As long as 60% of that is provable, you're okay. We have another tax person on here who will pick up the information as far as the payroll expenses and things of that nature. One of the things that I would like to add is when you're in this period, you may want to add a family member. If you have a family member who is under 18 years old, that family member can be part of your payroll and account for the expenses related to your COVID expenses. That's about it. Apply for forgiveness and things. Well, the 10-month period, all of the application for forgiveness, as I understand it, must be done by December 31st. So we won't go past that 10-month period as well. That's all I have to add right now.
Very good. Thank you, sir. Does anyone on the panel have anything else they want to add to this forgiveness discussion?
I'll just mention from a tax standpoint, payroll was mentioned. So if you're a sole proprietor, that can be a confusing term when we hear payroll. What is payroll if you're a sole proprietor? It doesn't mean that you need to try to rush out and pay yourself through a payroll company. As was mentioned earlier by both panelists, you're looking at your Schedule C. Your Schedule C is key. That's something that you already have. It's something your tax professional or you yourself have already prepared. Now, individuals that are on the call, or if you have someone in mind who is in business for themselves and they are in an S corporation status, now that's a different situation. They will have payroll. They will have Form 940, 941, and other payroll documents that are filed quarterly and annually that will serve as their documentation, but they're already set up for that. They have to do reasonable salary anyway. That's something that they already have. So don't think that there is something that you have to do differently to apply for this. Your situation as it is, there is a provision, there is a caveat that will allow you to take advantage of it. So going back to the streamlined situation, it's an easy application. It really is. And you don't have to, now you have to document, and there's a little bit of math involved, as was already described, but don't feel like you have to go out there and do something drastically different to apply and to be approved, because the reality is you don't.
Well, and one thing I have found, Randy, is that many of my Schedule C people did not keep good records. And so it's very important to get your records straight before you apply, because all the banks would want to look at right now is line 31 of your Schedule C. But the normal Schedule C people that some of my clients, they had very few good record keeping. And so I encourage everybody at this point to hire a good bookkeeper.
Very good. Thank you, sir. And Mr. Banks, can you talk to us about what you've seen at United Bank with respect to forgiveness? I know you've moved out of the Paycheck, the PPP acceptance period. Now you're in forgiveness. Can you share some thoughts?
Yeah, we hired a consultant because we did several thousand PPP applications, and I had quite a few for the Black-owned businesses in the city. So all of mine got through on the second tranche, and I'm really sorry to hear that a lot of the people did not get their PPP. If you're still looking, our bank, we're just taking our existing customers for the new applications. I would advise people to look at their bank and to talk to them. A lot of banks dropped the ball on getting these out. What we're hearing is that with the forgiveness, it's gonna, and don't quote me on this, it's because everything changes, as you know, when they put the PP loan application out there, it changed that Friday. It was a whole new application. So all the old applications, it was just a fiasco. But what we're hearing is that most of the applicants, the loans that were under $150,000 are going to be forgiven just about automatically if you have adequate documentation. There's not going to be that much of a pushback. Anything above that, there may be a little bit more, and then the larger amounts, there will be a lot more review. But we had so many of them that we did, hundreds of thousands of over, I can't remember, it was a few thousand loans that we did over our 8-9 state footprint. And so we have a lot of concern on how this process is going to work for those that are over $150,000. So it's still changing, and I want to make sure that you stay in touch with your bank, talk to them about it, and make sure that you have proper documentation. It was fairly easy going in the E-Train system once it got up and going on the second tranche. Now becomes a difficult part, on documentation, to make sure that you actually kept good records for your payroll, so that you're not challenged on that. That's the main concern that we have. And there are organizations that are out there, trust companies. I have one of them. They're actually buying these PP loans with the anticipation that they can make money off of I don't know how they're going to make money off of 1% loan, but they're looking at a way to buy the loans from the banks, so the banks are not there for a loan at 1%, and they're banking on some of the loans not being forgiven. So I look at them as being kind of like a scavenger, looking for an opportunity to make a quick buck. So make sure you don't fall into that category and have proper documentation. That's what we're looking for.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Banks. Very good. Next slide, please, Kyle. EIDL. Darren, can you please share?
Sure. So I'm going to speak to you about the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, or EIDL. And this is a loan tool that's been with the SBA for a long time. It's created to provide economic assistance during times of disaster. So it's used for a variety of different situations over the years. But with the onset of the pandemic, the U.S. government adjusted the qualifications or eligibility for the EIDL loans. And they made it open to sole proprietors, freelancers, independent contractors, gig workers, agricultural businesses, and businesses with less than 500 employees. Now, the EIDL, technically, you can apply for loans up to $2 million, but however, in practice and what's been happening is that most of the loans have been capped at $150,000. The loans are available to cover a variety of expenses, including payroll, inventory, to pay debt, or any business-related expenses. So it's a pretty broad range of expenses and costs that can be covered with the EIDL loans. The loans are issued at a low interest rate of 3.75% for small businesses and 2.75% for not-for-profit companies and organizations. The deadline for submitting an EIDL application under this current iteration is December 21st of this year. So you have more time to take advantage of this funding resource. But one of the qualifications to obtain the EIDL loan is the business must have been in existence before January 31st, 2020 in order to apply for the loan. And that's just one of the questions I saw in the chat group. There was, for a limited time, a part of the EIDL program that was actually a grant program where an applicant could apply for a grant up to $10,000, basically $1,000 per employee, that would not have to be repaid. But the available funds for that grant have been allocated, so that's no longer available. But the EIDL loans is still a key loan that we should be taking advantage of. The loans have, as I mentioned before, they have a greater range of expenses that can be covered by the loans, and you have more time to apply for the loans. So the loans, there are borrowers who have obtained and applied for both a PPP loan and an EIDL loan. And if you're in that situation and you have obtained an EIDL loan that was issued between the months of January 31st and April 3rd, you can actually use your PPP loan funds to refinance your EIDL loan funds, where those loans where the EIDL loans were used to pay payroll costs and get a lower interest rate on your EIDL loans. So that's something to keep in mind for those of you who have obtained funding under both sources. To apply for the EIDL loan, you apply directly to SBA. You have the website there. And I'll turn it over to Mr. Henderson or Mr. Banks or Mr. Hughes if you have comments on some insight in applying for and obtaining the EIDL loans.
Well, I found that the EIDL loan was easier to obtain than the PPP, especially as it related to the sole proprietors. So the EIDL loan took, the first iteration of the EIDL loan was a disaster, but once they got it fixed, it became almost as easy as the applying for the PPP, and they seem to work much faster with the SBA part than the banks did. And it was bank dependent, of course, with the PPP loans.
Yeah, and to add on to both of those comments, going back to what Darren mentioned earlier, a lot of individuals who applied for this saw about a $1,000 advance, at least those that are one employee businesses. So there's a number of one employee businesses, particularly S corporations, but not limited by any means to that. But you would get that $1,000 advance because it's $1,000 per employee, as Darren mentioned. That is an advance. So what happens now, if you applied for that and then later got the PPP, then not all of your PPP is going to be forgiven because that $1,000 is going to be taken into consideration. So that's one thing you have to keep in mind, just to keep the math simple. Let's say that you got a $7,000 PPP, but then you got $1,000 advance on your EIDL. When you go to apply for forgiveness, the maximum amount of forgiveness you're going to be able to get on that PPP is $6,000 because you have the other $1,000 that's already been forwarded or advanced to you. So you want to keep that in mind. If you have both, it kind of goes back to what all the other panelists have been talking about when it comes to documentation and record keeping, because you want to be able to keep track of that so you know what you're paying back, what you have to pay back, and what you don't have to pay back. So that's going to be very, very important to keep in mind.
All right, very good. Thank you. Next slide, please. So we're going to have a brief discussion here about developing these affinity groups and allies, especially during COVID, to help you and your business sort of, succeed and be ready to go. So we're going to start the conversation off with Mr. Banks. If you can just share just a little bit about what we were talking about recently, developing the tribe, and we're going to go around to each of the panelists.
And you want to talk about applying for loans for which amount? Just straight loans, or
just in general, just making sure that people have their tribe around them, as it were, so that when things come up like this, they have people they can readily reach out to get the support and the understanding they may need during these complex, regulations that come forth.
Sure.
So,
yeah. Any business owner, one of the downfalls, a lot of our Black businesses, we may not have someone at the country club that can give us some free advice as an attorney, or we can barter as a CPA. We have to pay for these services, and so you become heavily leveraged as a business, and kind of a disadvantage. But it's really important to have a tight team. You have your tax accountant, your CPA, your attorney. We're always looking at the bank when we look at a deal. We're looking at the 3 M's: the money, the management, marketing of that firm. Standard, looking at these, what is needed. 3 years of financial statements. We have, and 3 years of anyone that has a ownership of 20% or more of that company, we need their personal financials. I chair the DC Financial Literacy Council for the mayor and for the DC Council, and we work out of the Department of Insurance, Securities, and Banking, and I'm a volunteer board chair. And we have a program in DC called the Cash Collateral Support Program, whereas the District of Columbia will guarantee your loan up to 1/2 of your loan up to $1 million. For instance, I had a masonry company that is a construction company. The bonding companies are in the first lien position, so the banks are kind of challenged when it comes to coming behind the bonding companies as far as who is in the first lien position should something go south on that particular loan. Well, the District of Columbia put up, through this program, up to 1/2 of the loan amount So we did a $2 million loan for this construction company. The district put up $1 million, deposited it into our bank, and we were able to use that. And this company was able to hire over 300 returning citizens, because we have about 3,500 people coming home from jail, and they let a lot of people out because of the COVID-19. And so this is a program, and they're actually doing some of the startups. They did a few for startups. Normally, when you go out for a loan, you need 3 years of financials. And another program that they have is a loan participation program. And with the loan participation program, they'll give you a blended rate. So if the bank is somewhere around 4% and the district takes a portion of that loan, they may come in at 2%, and you get a blended rate of maybe 3%. That's another program that they have. And under the Obama administration with the Treasury Department, they had the Small Business Recovery Act back around 2010, about 10 years ago. And every jurisdiction received money. Most states got a couple of $100 million for that. And if you're in another state outside of the nation's capital, I would check to see if your state continued that program, because that's what we did in the District of Columbia. We only received like $13 million for this program, but it has really helped, because once those funds were exhausted, the city came back and put their funds into the program. And so this is the first time I've really noticed any municipality willing to guarantee someone's loan and put their funds at risk to stimulate successful businesses and employment opportunities in their jurisdiction. So I think that's a great program that people should look for: the cash collateral support program and the loan participation program.
Thank you, Mr. Banks. Darren, can you talk about developing a community of allies from a legal perspective? What people should be looking for during this time of PPP and EIDL loans?
Yeah, definitely. And I'll say this to anybody: people should be looking for attorneys. Anytime you are signing documents or you're committing something, it's always good to have somebody look those documents over. One, to make sure that you understand what it is that you're signing and what the risks are in signing those documents, but also to having a legal resource that you could rely on to identify, other than just reviewing loan documentations. It's good to have that type of legal support to help you ensure that the company has its business formalities taken care of. For example, that you have your certificate of good standing, that you're complying with the various local regulations that apply to your business entity. Having that type of support and guidance can be critical, particularly in the situation where you're applying for loans, and much of that type of documentation is required for the loan applications. So making sure you have your ducks in a row is something that's very important as you go through this process. So being able to identify legal resources that can support you in doing that is critical, but also it gives you a resource of somebody who can advocate on your behalf if need be. If there are situations where you may have be engaged with discussions with loan officers or SBA representatives, oftentimes it can help to have legal counsel engaged in those discussions to help facilitate and address any concerns or confusion that may arise from the process. So just having the legal resource there I think is key. And this is DC. There are lots of options for attorneys, needless to say, here in DC. And there are plenty of attorneys like myself that focus on helping small businesses to ensure that they grow and are successful in their strategic efforts to grow their business operations.
Very good. Thank you, Darren.
One thing I like to add is that I have helped entrepreneurs, startups, help them get their startup cash by setting up solo Ks for them, because you do need some startup funds. And so if you have an old 401k at your old job, you can roll that money over, set it up as a solo K. You can extract $50,000 from that as part of your startup money, and it doesn't cost you any interest or any penalties if you're under 59 and a half. Part of the COVID legislation, if you have been subject to the problems of COVID, you can now extract $100,000 from your 401k and use that money. And even if you have to pay the money back, you still have 3 years to pay off the interest if you take a distribution from it. But you can still take the money and roll it over into a solo K and not have to have any interest or taxes being paid for that. And that's a good way to get your startup cash without having to pay any interest. And maybe some of the bankers, Mr. Banks, will speak to that, whether or not they can use the solo K money as collateral. I don't know how that will go.
That might be something that we could follow up in the answer period and address that. I think that would be a great conversation if we have the time to do so, or maybe a follow-up webinar, who knows. Thank you so much for that. Next slide, please. Randy, reasons why we want to make sure our community applies for these opportunities.
Yeah, it's absolutely imperative because it's imagine having somebody, you've fallen and you have somebody reaching out to you, but you're lying on the ground trying to figure out, should I trust this person? Should I lay here? Should I get up? You're not quite sure what to do. And the reality is all of us are that person laying down in some aspect of our lives. There's nobody that knows everything, right? So to the extent that we can build our tribe, as was mentioned on the last slide, or our team, it's really, really going to help us as individuals to thrive. So Mr. Riley was talking about having an attorney if you're going to sign something. That's an outstanding idea. Mr. Henderson has spoken about the importance of having someone who understands tax or bookkeeping, and that's imperative. And it's not as expensive as sometimes we think within our community. Many times what happens is when we invest in those things, instead of thinking about it as a cost, if we think of it as an investment in ourselves, I can't tell you how many times we have individuals, well, they're not coming physically into our office now, but we do a lot of remote work or virtual work, where the cost that they pay for a service, the return that they get on that far outweighs what they've paid. And so, for example, Mr. Henderson just gave an outstanding tip about 401k. Now, if you're doing your taxes on TurboTax, and there's nothing against TurboTax, if you're doing your taxes on TurboTax and now this situation came up, is TurboTax giving you a call and letting you know your options? If you have somebody on your team that's looking out for your interests, they're going over these scenarios with you. Is it better for me to do a withdrawal, or is it better for me to take a loan? What are the different time implications? How is the interest rate impacted? Do I have to pay a penalty? These are things that individuals like Mr. Riley and Mr. Henderson are ready to answer. And so it's imperative for us to have individuals like that on our team. This is a situation that happened with COVID that took everybody by surprise, the government included. And so the speed in which this was rolled out, there was a lot of things that were done that, had there been more time, may have been done differently. And that is probably a totally different webinar or seminar. But the fact of the matter is, there have been two different programs that have been talked about: the PPP and the
EIDL.
The EIDL, right? Thank you. The EIDL. Both have been talked about, and both have the potential to allow an individual or a business owner to receive funds that they don't have to pay back. If you had individuals on your team that were helping you, guiding you, hey, is this a scam? I had somebody on my team back in early April say, hey, I just heard about a program where you can apply for this and then you don't have to pay it back. Is that true? well, we're happy to look into that. Those are the types of things we want to look into for you, so that we can let you know whether it's legitimate or not, so that you're not paying somebody in Western Europe who's asking you for $10,000 to help their friend get out of jail. You have to have somebody who can help you identify whether this is legitimate or whether it's not. And right here on this call, laid in each of our laps, is a network of individuals that's ready to help. So as a community, we have to take advantage of those things. Sometimes it's hard to find, but initiatives like this help us to get the word out so that we can learn to work along with each other. So it's absolutely imperative that we help each other with this so that we can continue to be the knowledgeable community that we have the potential and the realization, of course, obviously, to be.
Thank you, Randy. And I'll add to that too, just even in the, I feel like I've spoken to so many people where the conversation has turned to, well, I don't want the government in my business. I don't want them. And I'm like, you're applying for money that's basically going to probably be forgiven. Even at the worst case scenario, it's a way lower interest rate than you'll see on a normal business loan. This is a cash infusion that you could use right now, most everybody. And at the end of the day, with 5 minutes and 10 keystrokes, the government can be in your business anyway. I mean, I work in national security. We know what we can do. So just apply, apply, apply. Do not let this stop you. Please, please don't. Go for it and go early and go often. Someone had the question in the chat. If you've applied and you've received the EIDL and the PPP loans, are you able to apply again? The answer is no. You can only be awarded each loan once. But if you are going to apply as you go up to this August 8th deadline and you haven't already, apply at multiple places. Then what will happen is if you are awarded the PPP from one lender, then you have to just decline it from the other. But you need to hedge your bets at this point. So in talking to different tax attorneys and to folks that are at these consultancy firms, they're like, you can submit your application several places, but just if they award you funds, you need to decline all the other ones if they all come through. Okay, next slide, please. Mr. Henderson, I know that if you could just talk very briefly just about some of the other benefits and provisions people may not have heard of, and the panel can feel free to chime in under the CARES Act, sir.
So the refundable payroll tax credit, as long as you are paying your payroll, you have to pay match your employee for the Social Security and Medicare payments. Then the government will give you credit for that. You have to be careful if you have the EIDL loan and the PPP loan. Sometimes you'll have to see which one is better for you. But the government under the PPP will allow you to defer the payroll tax or get credit for it. The significant portion that this is a huge one, the net operating loss tax change. In the past, if you had a net operating loss, you could only take a portion of that loss. And so for instance, now in 2020, if you have a loss, you are allowed to go back 5 years and recapture a positive that you could not write off 5 years ago. So you may have to redo at least, well, in the past, you could only go back 3 years to get a refund, but now you can go back 5 years and get a refund on a net operating loss that you incurred this year. And the same thing applies to the net interest deduction limitation. If you had, you borrowed money in your business and you tried to write off interest, you were only able to write off a certain percentage of it. Now that percentage has increased so that you will have more expenses that you can write off. All this was part of the CARES Act and maybe the Secure Act as well. I get the two acts confused because both of those acts, the one that passed in December and the CARES Act that passed in March, have given us a lot of tax implications that we should take advantage of. Maybe Randy has some more information about what we just talked about.
Well, just to chime in, both of those things are outstanding features that are available because of the CARES Act, but it also highlights the importance of having someone that is tracking these things for you. Just as an example, just really quick, Mr. Henderson was just talking about net operating loss, for example, and he indicated, you know, if you have this loss, you can go back 5 years. There's other losses also that accumulate from year to year. So imagine the person that's jumping from tax preparer to tax preparer each year. Are you confident that those losses are being cracked properly and carried forward? Because if they're not, you could be leaving money on the table. If you're changing tax softwares because you want to do it yourself, which is, there's nothing wrong with that if that's what you choose to do. But now if you're changing a different tax softwares every single year, are you sure you're not leaving losses that you could have been claiming this year on the table by doing that? And then even if you're not, do you know how to apply them? Do you know how to get the software to calculate or trigger that loss for you this particular year? So there's so many different things that we need to be aware of. And these things right here, the 4 things listed on the slides, are outstanding examples of why it's important to have that team, that knowledgeable team on your side, in your corner. And again, we want to reiterate, it's an investment in yourself. It's not as much as you might think it may be. So keep that in mind.
Very good. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Everyone, any other comments? I'm just trying to answer questions in real time, but any other comments that the panelists, anyone want to share with the group?
You know, during this pandemic season, it's one of the things we haven't talked about is transitioning a business over to the next generation. And it was a scary situation. I had a family member that went on a black ski trip and came back with the COVID. And thank God he had prepared in advance to make sure that my wife was able to inherit the business because something happened and he was not prepared. That's something that could have just been really tough. I think about all of the businesses that once the founder passed away, there was no transition to the relatives, to the children, and we definitely need to be, prepare for retirement and transition to the next generation, so that we don't have these huge inheritance tax, and we're just prepared for it. And I think that that's something that we also have to think about when you're building your team.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Banks. Kyle, next slide, please. So I think we've been answering questions in real time in the chat, but if there's anything that you all want to know right now, please put it in the chat so we can respond. And while you're doing that, I want to just go to the last page and list these resources that will be available to you. Next slide, please. So I've listed the email address and the websites for everyone that's on this panel, but also the National Bar Association created, this team created a quick reference guide to help you walk through the PPP process. It's a short guide, so if you have anyone who has questions, they can ask there as well. Again, these funding sources, we don't endorse any of them, but we have found them to be responsible and still accepting the PPP applications. Call everyone in your family, friends, your circle. Make sure you let your church know. I've been able to walk my church through this process and they've been granted funds. Let them know, and it doesn't have to be all for non-secular services that they can claim some of this money for. Make sure your daycare providers, just everyone, your landscapers, people that are in your circle that you may not always think of having like a full on legitimate business, people who do hair, braiders, all of that. Let people know. The only way we are going to really thrive and succeed as a community is if we stick together. We have a saying in our family, never me, always we all win together. So we bring our talents to the storehouse, and by doing so, I'll do a little bit, you'll do a little bit, and we'll come together and have something great. You have these esteemed panelists that are outstanding. They just happen to be all men. But men of vision, they can help you, but also make sure if you hear about any little thing, you share that opportunity and let people know so that we all can get ahead, and not just like inches and little bits, but in leapfrogging bounds. Okay. Any questions? Any questions or comments? Let me see if there's any other questions in the thing. Thank you, former past President Banks, for your insight from the NAACP. So apparently the NAACP has resources available. So please go to their website as well for PPP loans. That's awesome. Thank you, ma'am, for sharing.
Yep. And Trinette, this is Darren. I just want to say thank you for this concept. I mean, this is a great idea, very informative and very timely. So kudos to you for
Thank you.
to reality.
Thank you. I'm battling through to the end, and we're excited. So if anybody's on this call and you're an attorney and you want to help some folks, hop on. Darren and I and Mr. Henderson, Mr. Banks, Kendra, and Randy Hughes, we will be glad to have you. And we're doing the work that I think Madam President would want us to do. And like I've been telling everybody, what would Thurgood do? He'd want us to engage. All right, so that's my personal hero. So with that, thank you so much, everyone. I'm going to turn it over to you, Kendra, for you to close us out. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Trinette, Darren, Randy, Colonel Henderson, Mr. Banks. This was awesome. I'm so full of excitement and appreciation to everyone who's contributed just to get this information out into the hands of our members, and so that they can, as Trinette advised and suggested, get it into the hands of others who really need to know it. You know, we are taxpayers. We are people who contribute to this economy, and these funds are available and accessible, and we as a community need to find a way to get a hold of them as best we can. And I think tonight's program, as well as the guide that you mentioned, Trinette, available on the NBA's website, or just email one of us and we can get it to you, should be helpful, and hopefully will be helpful in assisting people with taking advantage of these opportunities that are out there. Thank you so much again to each of the panelists. I learned so much. I have a couple phone calls I'm going to be making to folks to help them get ready before Saturday's deadline, and I hope others on the call will do the same. Thank you again to everyone who participated, and to the NBA, President Hoffler. We just are very appreciative to be a part of the solution, as President Hoffler said. So with that, I will just say good night, God bless, and stay safe.
Good night, everybody. Thank you so much.
Good night.
Take care.
Good job, everyone.
All right.
Yes. Nice
All right.
job.
Take care now. Bye-bye.